in the world today. I would like to begin with this partial quote from President John F. Kennedy. Let us not seek the Republican answer or the Democratic answer, but the right answer. Let us accept our responsibility for the future. 7 years into this nightmare, I am still waiting on justice for Mike, for my time to grieve and to heal. I lost my husband, my soulmate, and my best friend. My son lost his father, mentor, and idol. Our family lost a brother, uncle, best friend, the glue that held us all together, a teacher, cheerleader, backbone, and the rock of our family. Life will never, ever be the same because of James Ham Jr. Selfish, disgusting, self-centered, lying choices he made. Every 730 days, I begin my mission asking for signatures to support my petition to deny parole to James Ham Jr. Our son, my mother, my sister, and Mike's brothers have all carried petitions. No victim's family should have to fight what the courts found Ham guilty of and sentenced him to 15 years in prison. Late spring, I went to a college graduation party for a young lady that we had known since she was a small child. When I got ready to leave, I went to wish her well, and she said, I will never forget the influence Mike had on my life, and how much fun he was to be around, and the food he would cook for us, like no other could match. Mike had no bounds of age, fun, life, helpfulness, and kindness. He could talk to anyone and relate to any situation. On August 27, 2019, James Ham Jr. refused or attempted to alter a random alcohol and drug test. How does the murderer of my husband in a Tennessee state prison have the right to refuse an alcohol and drug test? This tells me he has not learned the consequences of his bad decisions. He still turns to alcohol and drugs, and even though he is in prison, his vices are available to him and others. How many classes has he actually taken and finished while in prison with regards to his alcoholism? In 2019, one of the jobs he had, but only lasted a couple of weeks on, was a prison cook. I find this rather ironic because for 30 plus years, Mike cooked and fed hundreds of people every day and made an honest living $1 at a time selling hot dogs. He had a reputation of gold and was described by many as the best man they had ever known. How is it that Ham has not taken any classes the last couple of years to learn any skills or make any improvements to his quality of person? How many times was he warned at Johnson City Medical Center for his alcoholism issues? How many rehab meetings did he attend after being written up? How many people, by working in respiratory therapy, had he already endangered? Yet he was still abusing alcohol and drugs when he hit and left the scene of an accident of a young driver in his own neighborhood, was out on bond, and 5 days later killed Mike. His own sister said at the sentencing he was a good brother who was raised by a good family, but he had had a problem with alcohol. How can Ham say he doesn't remember killing Mike, yet his first words to officers were, "Don't take me to jail"? Multiple things concern me about Ham. Refusing an alcohol and drug test 5 years later into his incarceration. Someone in his family or working on his behalf came into the hot dog hut, which Mike was founder, and asked someone in his family or working on his behalf came into the hot dog hut, which Mike was the founder of, and asked them.
Ms. Locke?
Yes,
Ms. Locke, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, we can do one of two things. You've gone over your 4 minutes. Again, I apologize. I know you want to be heard. We want to hear you. Like I said earlier, we do have other hearings, so we have to be fair to everybody. I'll allow you to continue. If somebody else wants to give up their minutes, they can. But at the rate we're going now, I really need to stick to the 4 minutes of 4 people. So anybody else, again, wants to give up their time, you're welcome to continue. If not, if you would please close whatever you're saying out in a few sentences, please.
Mr. Locke just has a few seconds that he's gonna speak, so, if you'll allow her to finish, or if you want her to go ahead and wrap it up, we can.
Now, whatever is good for you, again, I want everybody to be heard, but again, ladies and gentlemen, I just have to be fair to everybody going forward. So, Ms. Locke, if you want to continue, go ahead.
Someone in his family or working on his behalf came into the hot dog hut, which Mike was founder of, and asked them to sign a petition to release him on parole. The new owners asked, why would they even come into that business? And the answer was, they thought it would look good for Ham. They were asked to leave and not come back. Does this sound like remorse? Does this sound like someone with any respect, especially to the man he just murdered? If this is his support team, he has no support, just enablers. He has not learned from his past. The 7,100 plus in-person and online signatures represent about 1/10 of the residents in Sullivan County, including relatives and neighbors of Ham, that signified they do not want Ham released, for his next victim may be their own family member. In 2018, I spoke before the Tennessee Criminal Justice Committee. My turn came after the Corrections Department, and I listened as their department asked for more monies to help control prisoners' behaviors for their jobs, duties, and classes while they were incarcerated. I've been told of their prison parties. This year, I celebrated my 40th wedding anniversary alone. Our family has an empty chair at celebration tables and a gaping hole because of the heinous crime Ham committed, but continues every year to ask us every year to let him out of jail. All I want is justice for Mike. We all make mistakes and have debts to pay. The law says I must pay my taxes. If I don't, they add penalties and interest. If I don't pay then, they take my house. James Ham took my husband's life, guilty of vehicular homicide by intoxication, felony reckless endangerment, leaving the scene of an accident involving a fatality, failure to exercise due care, and while out on bond for some of the same offenses, Ham wants to pay only half his debt without penalties and interest. He must pay his full debt. Nothing I say here will bring Mike back. I understand that. But Mike deserves his dignity and justice, and so does our family. 14 years is nowhere near justice for the kind of man Mike was to me, his son, his brothers, our family, the community, state, and the country which Mike served.
That's right.
I will close with a quote from President Ronald Reagan. We must reject the idea that every time a law is broken, society is guilty rather than the lawbreaker. It is time to restore the American precept that each individual is accountable for his own actions. I beg this board to deny parole to James D. Ham by holding him accountable for his own actions. This is the honest, fair, right, and just thing to do now and for future victims.
Exactly right.